Homage to the Blessed One, Noble One, the rightly self-awakened One. Homage to the Blessed One, Noble One, the rightly self-awakened One. Homage to the Blessed One, Noble One, the rightly self-awakened One. We make our minds to be firm by having mindfulness to know the in and out breath. When we breathe in, we think But. We breathe out, we think Do. We know that this is the method in order to reduce our thinking and proliferation in the mind, because in the time that has passed by, these 15 days, we have received various news, both inside and outside of the country. These are all the aramana, the sense objects that are entering into the mind. When we receive more and more of these many sense objects, we gain pleasure to go know all the news, and then disturbances can come up in our minds. But to not know anything at all about what's going on around us is also not good. So we do know some things, but after knowing it, we have to try to put them down as well. Especially in the time that we practice Dhamma, we have to be able to put down these sense objects, to not mentally add on more to it, to not be delighted, and when people are doing badly, we don't make it worse. In the beginning, we look after our own minds. We have metta, goodwill, we have compassion and sympathy for all people. But a person who has sila Dhamma, morality and goodness, when we keep the 5 moral precepts, we won't kill any living beings, even an ant or a mosquito. And we can think that what is important in our life is only to find a refuge for our spiritual hearts. We can see someone who has much wealth, many possessions, and a big house. But when there are disasters coming up, whether it's disasters from storms and hurricanes, with fierce winds that cause the destruction of buildings, or huge disasters like tsunamis, which can lead to much loss of life, or it can be disasters like fires or volcanic eruptions, which all cause harm to the body of humans. So this material wealth is only external. When it comes to the time, then we must try to escape with our lives. We have to throw these things away, abandon one's house, abandon one's city, abandon one's residence. So when we love ourselves like this, then the Buddha taught us that we need to see our true self. If we don't see the true self, we only have a sense of self. We have attachment in I and mine. Then this leads suffering to arise in our hearts. So a wise person, an arahant, he taught a fundamental teaching that is very simple, for even when our minds are distressed and lowered, like when there is fighting between sides, we do not take sides or back either side. We have to first put this down from our hearts. There is one story when once Venerable Ajahn Chah was putting effort into his practice, and when he was tired, he sat and took some rest. He saw a group of black and red ants who were fighting on 2 sides. He would cheer on the black ants for some time, and then cheer on the red ants for some time. Venerable Ajahn Ginari, who was an important disciple of Venerable Ajahn Mun, and who was the teacher of Ajahn Chah, walked there and said, "Ow, you've dropped down to hell. You've gone up to heaven. You've dropped down to hell. You've gone up to heaven." Then he walked off. He taught in a Zen way, very simply, And Ajahn Chah wondered, why was it so quick to drop down to hell? Why was it so quick to go up to heaven? Why was this? So Ajahn Chah meditated on it. In the beginning, we can understand this, and we may have heard it before, about heaven being in the heart, and hell is in the heart, but it's not yet understood clearly. When Ajahn Chah was walking meditation, and meditating on why this was, he gained clear understanding of this, that it was simply because of our mind. The mind delights in the one who is victorious. This is heaven. Being saddened by one who loses, this is hell. Here Ajahn Chah understood that we have to maintain and look after our minds. Don't get caught into liking or disliking, and don't support a side like that, as it is harming one another. So in this world that we live in, we can see there are many arguments and disputes between people. There are disputes within group of friends, or being a child, there are disputes in the group of children, disputes in group of adults, or in the workplace. Or disputes coming from attachments to one's country may lead to wars, conflicts, and killings. And wars like this have existed since before the time of the Buddha. There were wars during the time of the Buddha, and even in the present day there are still wars. Like in the time of the Buddha, there were those that waged war over disputes over land and water. The Buddha came and taught the Kolian and Sakyan people who were about to go to war, even though they were relatives and close friends. But it arose because it was a time of lacking natural resources. Back then there was no oil, nor natural gas, and if we look back, we may think that it's quite funny that people back then would fight over water like that. But we have to understand that back then, water had great value. It would have been equivalent to oil and natural gas today, which all the people around the world desired. And they quarreled over it, because without natural resources and energy, then there is chaos all around the world. The price of it keeps going up. So in the time of the Buddha, water was important for life, so they had to go to war over it. But the Buddha came and gave them the wisdom that though it is true that water is important, but compared to life, which one is more important? And so the Sakyan and Kolian people contemplated this and saw that the life of a person is more important. If we quarrel and go to war like this, and we fight and kill, and people are harmed and die, then the parents will have to part with loved ones and be full of suffering. When this happens, there is crying and weeping, and no benefit is gained. So the two chief clans of royalty could be peaceful and listen to the teachings of the Buddha as their authority, who had a lot of barami and who gave them wisdom. When the Sakyan and Kosian royalty gained that wisdom, they were able to stop a war and killing from breaking out. So what is important is to have harmony together. There will be some views that are not in line or the same with each other, because there are many different minds, each mind having different thoughts, each person having different views. But regardless of this, we don't quarrel and fight because of views that are not the same. This is the foundation of the Buddha's teachings. This is Saraniya Dhamma, the Dhamma that leads people to be considerate of each other. This is in terms of one's actions, speech and mind. It must be practiced in front of people and behind their backs. One's actions, speech and mind has a quality of metta, goodwill to each other. So when it's like this, then there will be love and affection, and unity and harmony arising. If we have Dhamma, a noble virtue already, we have metta for each other already, then this will support and uphold the world. But if the world lacks metta, then it can be destroyed. The Buddha taught Loko Patambika Metta. The quality of metta is what supports the world. If there is metta for each other, or there is Dhamma, then there will be peace and happiness arising. In the time of the Buddha taught the Dhamma in many kingdoms, in the Magdaha and Anga kingdoms, and the Kolian kingdom of King Pasenadi. And then they did not harm each other anymore. If the Buddha didn't teach them, they would have had wars, disputes, and killings, and the increasing of their land and enlarging their kingdoms. The kingdoms that had weapons and power would have tried to enlarge their kingdoms at the expense and harm of the smaller kingdoms. It would have been like this. And if there was no harming of each other, and they lived in peace and happiness, then there would be a lot of santi, calm and tranquility arising. In one of our Buddha's past lives, he was the king of the city of Varanasi. He ruled his country with Dhamma and did not harm the people, to the point that all the ministers of his country saw the Buddha as being weak in his rule. And when the ministers who were corrupt and cheating got caught by the Buddha-to-be, they left the country to stay in another neighboring country. Then they enticed that country to go to war with Varanasi city, because the king of Varanasi was very weak. Whenever a robber stole or someone was corrupt, he would just let them go. And the king in that neighboring country was Venerable Ananda in a past life. He then tested out what the ministers had said by sending a soldier disguised as a robber to steal in that country. After being caught, the king of Varanasi, the Buddha-to-be, let them go, and without any punishment. So the king, who was Venerable Ananda Thera, brought an army to attack, and it was just as those ministers said, that the king of Varanasi was weak, and they had to wage war and take over their land. So they attacked, expanded, and took over the Buddha-to-be's lands, and he did not fight back, and so it was easy to take over the land. And our Buddha-to-be was caught, and the ministers wanted to execute the king. The Buddha-to-be saw that it was time, and entered samadhi, concentration, and jhana, mental absorptions, and could leave the jail, and then suppressed the king of that city completely. And he taught with Dhamma for them not to harm others. And the Buddha did not fight back, nor take the army to quell the attack, because then many people would have had to die. Or if the Buddha let them attack and he abandoned them and ran away, then they would be able to be taken over. But here the Buddha had the Dhamma of Khanti, patient endurance, and wisdom, because he did not make the people of both sides be troubled. So the Buddha had the power and parami, spiritual perfections, but he did not cause any harm. So if the people in this present day, or the people with more strength than others, they have no sila Dhamma, morality, then they would be able to harm and mistreat each other, and chaos and troubles can then arise. So if sila Dhamma, morality, doesn't come back, then the world will be in ruins. This is the saying of one wise person for us to take away to contemplate. We should see that harming others is not right, and it leads to chaos and troubles in our lives. May we train and develop our minds at one time in the day. So even if there is a lot of news, may we put them down, enter samadhi, and make our minds be delighted and joyous in the Dhamma. It is the path to peace in our minds, and so that we can develop our minds to be bright and radiant. This is the weapon of Dhamma. This metta is the important weapon, which will look after our minds to be safe and secure from all disasters and dangers. May you all have happiness. May you grow in blessings.